All right. Happy week 3, everyone, of our Parent Cafe program. This is the second installment of our Parent Cafe program called Superb Social Skills, where we're going to be discussing for this Parent Cafe concepts such as social anxiety and thinking about how we as parents can manage socially stressful situations and cultivate, social competence and social, success within our kids. So that leaves us to our presentation. Again, social anxiety, managing socially stressful situations. We can start off with some introductions. So just to give you an idea of who the individual is going to be interfacing with you today, we are undergraduates at UCLA. We're members of an organization called Community Health Collective, or CHC, where we essentially aim to take a community-centered approach in ameliorating health injustices through community education, research, and practice. So you'll notice that this installment of our Parent Cafe is more towards that thread of community education, though we don't restrict ourselves to just that thread. We also delve into research and practice. As for introductions, we're gonna just go popcorn down the list of the individuals who are gonna be talking to you today. My name is Nathan. I am from the Human Biology and Society Department. I will popcorn to Chris.
Hello, I'm Chris from the Psychobio department. A popcorn to Irene.
Hi, I'm Irene, and I'm also from the Psychobio department. I'll popcorn to Lisa.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I'm from the Human Biology and Society department. And I'll popcorn to Isha.
Hi, I'm Isha, and I'm also from the Psychobiology department.
All right, awesome. So those are the individuals who are going to be speaking to you today. We also have Dr. Dana Kalick, and I'll invite her to take the floor.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Dana Kalick. I'm the Director of Operations for the Child Development Institute. We're really happy to be able to collaborate with Community Health Collective so that they can bring us this awesome research and do these presentations for parents. So welcome.
All right, thank you. So we are going to move on to a very general agenda of what is to be expected of this week's lecture. So we're going to start off with social anxiety. We're going to think about why it's important and how to deal with it. Then we're going to move on to what parents can do. So essentially, we're going to think about how you can be involved in the process of getting your kid to a place where they can navigate their own social anxiety. And we're going to also think about how we can validate emotions intermittently, because we know that emotions are heavily tied to social anxiety. Then we're going to move on to a practice activity. We're going to walk through a situation that involves social anxiety. And finally, we're going to think about very tangible skills in order to cope with social anxiety and also being very successful in social situations.
So, what is social anxiety? Social anxiety is pretty much where an individual has some kind of a fear of social interactions, and it will result in some kind of intense anxiety. Whether intense or not intense, it is very common. As you can see, this quote from raisingchildren.net shows that around 1 to 9% of children and teenagers develop social anxiety. There's very many causes, but it is also very common. So, because of that, it is really easy to find ways to help your child get through it.
So, what exactly does social anxiety look like? Here we will talk about different signs of social anxiety. Emotionally, your kiddo might be extremely worried or have excessive self-consciousness or have an extreme fear of judgment and embarrassment by others. Physically, when in social situations, your kiddo's face might turn red, they could have trembling or shaky voice, and they could also feel dizzy or faint or have some shortness of breath. As for behavioral signs, they would be avoiding social situations, staying quiet or hiding in a group setting. They might always need a buddy to tag along with them, and they might always be on their phones instead of talking to people. So why does it matter? Kids go through many social situations every day, whether to a family member or to teachers and peers at school, or even to strangers when you go to the grocery store. So teaching your kiddo how to feel comfortable in socially stressful situations is a very skill to have in life.
So that leaves us to what we can do as parents to think about how to encourage social skills and also diminish social anxiety. And essentially, there are three very important pieces of this puzzle to effective modeling of social competence and social success. And these very general frameworks can be embodied by the acknowledge piece, the connect piece, and the encourage piece. The acknowledge piece is somewhat twofold. We want to acknowledge when our child completes a task that would typically make them anxious, or acknowledge when they try to do a task. So it's important that while we honor outcomes, we also honor the process and the attempts towards social success. We also want to make sure that we involve a lot of praise to this process. And this essentially is more towards boosting confidence in social competence and social success. The second piece of the acknowledge framework is essentially to acknowledge any emotions that might be associated with anxiety. And these emotions could be positive or negative. It's just important that we first label these emotions, make them known to both you and your child, and then also think about how to validate it. We want to be very active in the process of making sure that these emotions are honored and validated as opposed to dismissed. So that basically looks like identifying that emotion and saying things like, I understand that you're feeling this way, and I think that's very normal. Here are some steps that we can take so that we can approach a place where you might not feel this way anymore. The second piece of the puzzle is connecting with your child. Essentially, we want to normalize the experience of anxiety. And we want to make clear that it's a very valid and universal response to very new and foreign situations. If you're comfortable as a parent to basically divulge some times when you personally have felt anxious, this could be very advantageous because it could inform your child that this is a very natural and normal response. And it could also set you as a role model for how to navigate socially stressful situations. We can then use this to inform how you and your child can collaboratively work at finding ways to cope with social anxiety. Finally, we get to the encourage piece of this puzzle. And essentially, we want to make sure that we can encourage your child to join social situations and start new activities. This could mean honing in on something that your child is passionate about or shows a natural affinity towards, and basically setting them up for success by encouraging them to regularly participate in this recreational activity. So it's really important that we hone in on this principle that only with practice will things get better. And as for very general things to avoid, we want to avoid forcing, speaking for, and punishing our child. So we want to make sure that we don't force our child into tough social situations when they're not ready, as this could actually make things worse and exacerbate a lot of the social anxiety that your child might be feeling. So if your child is not comfortable navigating social situations by themselves first, we can think about ways to ease them into these social situations. We can start by maybe entering these social situations with them, or encouraging a trusted friend or ally to also join this social situation with them. But of course, we want to get to a point where this child feels self-sufficient and able to do these to navigate social situations by themselves. So we want to constantly be thinking about how we can decentralize ourselves as the main force that keeps a social situation going. This transitions well to our second point, which is avoiding speaking for your child. This essentially takes away the opportunity for them to speak for themselves and can actually cause them to be reliant on another individual to be successful in social situations. In many ways, this lessens a child's likelihood of success in navigating social situations themselves. And we want to make sure that we ensure success when you're there and also when you're not there. And then finally, we want to avoid punishments. And we instead want to get into the habit of pacing social situations in a way that your child appreciates, but in a way that could still be challenging for the child to make them, more confident in situations that they're not previously confident on. So by enforcing punishments, we might accidentally prime the association between social situations to negative outcomes, which is something we want to avoid. We want to encourage social readiness from a place of intrinsicness and from the self. Also, I noticed someone said something. Does anyone have something to add or any questions?
Sorry, we were just having her grab the key.
Yeah, no worries about it. All right, so we're going to move on to the next slide.
All right, now let's walk through a scenario where maybe you could practice some of these skills we just talked about. Let's say you and your child are in an ice cream store and you're about to order. Previously, your child tells you that they want chocolate and you say you're going to get vanilla. When you go up to the cash register, your child hides behind you and won't say the order. You try and move out of the way, but your child grips behind you and won't let go. You ask them to tell the cashier what you want, but your child violently shakes their head no. What do? What do you say to your child, and how do you solve the problem? Just as importantly, what are some things that you shouldn't do? If any parent would like to just unmute and then speak up about what they would do, that would be great. And sometimes one of the problems I see is that when this happens, the parent like starts to yell at their child, or like, if you're not going to order, you're not going to get any, like give them that sort of like punishment. And that makes the child just seem more scared, more fearful. And it really reinforces the idea that like all these social scenarios are like negative and makes them feel bad. When really, as the parent, maybe another way you could do it is that you can point to the ice cream flavors one by one. Do you want this? They'll shake their head no. Do you want this? They'll shake their head yes. So like slowly but surely through like positive reinforcement, you want the child to want to enjoy doing these social things instead of punishing them, berating them, which will make them not want to do it. So moving on to some tips to help manage social anxiety, you can start with the stepladder approach. This means that for something like if your child is having trouble ordering ice cream at the store, maybe they can practice at home ordering food from you. So that helps them get used to the social scenario that they'll be facing later on in a more acceptable environment for them before they actually do it in like a more stressful scenario. One thing that's hard for them to do probably at the moment is to calm down. But as the parent, it could be like your responsibility to help them take deep breaths, maybe take a seat, take a break from the stress that they're feeling, because if they are stressed, it's going to be harder for them to operate. One thing that I know a lot of people like to do is journal. Maybe you can help your child draw or write down their thoughts on paper, because once they empty out their minds, all those worries and thoughts they have in their heads, they can finally feel more at ease, have like a clear mind walking into these social scenarios. Two things that go hand in hand are focusing and mindfulness. This all revolves around staying in the present moment by focusing on things that you can control, like maybe holding on to a calming object like a parent's hand, or naming things that you can see, smell, and touch. And stop thinking about like the future and just being present in what's happening right now. Your child can feel a lot more at ease and a lot more less stressed in these situations. And then this is the last step, is also really important, but it's you should not be afraid to seek help. Let the daycare or school know that your child is having problems with certain social scenarios, and then that maybe they need some extra accommodations. You can always reach out to CDI. The Child Development has wonderful work with children. They're always here to help, and they're really open and nice, kind people. So you should not be afraid to get professional help, because this is what they're trained to do. This is what they went all through their school for. They're very good at their job. So feel free to reach out to them. So let's share. If you guys have any, what are some things that make your child anxious, and what are some ways you guys help?
Recording.
So let's practice at home. Some things that you can do to practice with your kiddo is talking through a scenario, validating their feelings, and discuss possible solutions to help prepare for these tough situations that would make your child feel social anxiety. You can use all of the skills that we talked about today to help them manage these stressful situations. And you can start with your kiddos' smaller fears and then build up to face their biggest fears. And most importantly, give them praises and congratulate them on doing such a hard task. Here are some of the references that we used to create our PowerPoint presentation today.
So at this moment, I'm sure this discussion probably brought some questions that you might have. So we'd like to take this opportunity to extend the opportunity for any of you all to pose any questions for our team or to Dana if you have any questions that came up. I'm gonna pause the recording and then we can have those questions be brought up.